With the 2.2 update looming over the community after about 7 years, and a small change in the demons list that a few people noticed, just a few, this got me thinking about what could possibly be in store for the future of the top 150 hardest levels ever beaten in the game. I asked you guys in a community post on what some of your guesses might be for the future of the demon list, and picked out a few of them that seem to be more plausible for today's video. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please feel free to subscribe, and yeah, on with the video. So the first and probably the most obvious change is that most likely, the demon list is going to split into 2 separate lists because of the addition of platformer mode to the game. So there'll be one top 150 hardest level list for the actual main game, in which there's just the auto-scroller, and an identical one for the platformer mode, except, it's with platformer levels. These two kinds of gameplay are like so incredibly different from each other, I seriously doubt that they would be put in the same list. There's also the possibility for a third category of sorts in which there are speedruns of platformer levels, which is a whole thing in and of itself. My guess is that we'll probably see a speedrunning community develop within the larger Geometry Dash community, with a speedrun list probably not run by the same people who run the demon list. It's probably going to be a separate entity, I would imagine. I think logistically that makes a lot more sense because a speedrun list and a list of the hardest levels in the game are very different to manage, but I think it'll exist in some form. I also think a pretty safe assumption to make will be that interest around this kind of stuff like the demons list and speedrunning will dip for quite some time while everyone is just playing around with the update, and then it'll go back up. My personal prediction is that some people will be more interested in the speedrunning side of things, and then some people will be more interested in the auto-scroller or platformer side of things, in terms of the hardest levels of each category, which honestly will seem kind of refreshing. Really, the community centers so much around the demon list these days, before 2.2, and it can get pretty repetitive. One of the responses that really stood out on the community post was, after a few months, demons with actual 2.2 features will get added. People will most likely stay away from these in the beginning, as they usually are buggy and usually contain annoying gameplay. Soon enough, the demons will become unavoidable due to the sheer amount of new levels created. But I'm sure that some of the new players will push the limit farther again. Edit Swingcopter will carry difficulty for a lot of these levels, as nobody is really good at using it yet. The reason that this prediction has a pretty good chance of being true is because we've already seen this happen with previous updates long ago. When 1.9 rolled around, a lot of levels used the Wave game mode, which was a game mode added in 1.9 and therefore a game mode that people weren't very used to. So levels that were considered pretty much impossible back then, like Decode and 9 Circles, are now considered to be much more achievable and reasonable to the average player than when people were first introduced to the Wave game mode. I think especially the comment about the Swingcopter here is pretty relevant. And especially with the releases of 2.0 and 2.1, a lot of the levels that were first added to the demons list that were made in these updates were pretty buggy, or at least not quite as refined in terms of the gameplay of the levels because the update hadn't been out quite yet. A lot of people have predicted we're going to see this, but on steroids with 2.2 because we are literally adding a random trigger to the game. But I do still think that this will happen like a month or two after the update actually gets released because there's sort of a buffer time for people to actually verify stuff with the new features and get used to it, and for it to get placed and whatnot. I think the 2.2 Hz change will make a lot of really talented players rise in the community, because before 2.2, demonless levels were completely inaccessible for 60 Hz players. I do really hope that this change in 2.2 really does level the playing field. Someone with only a 60 Hz monitor or a mobile device are very much going to be a lot less likely to complete the hardest demons in the game than someone with a 360Hz monitor gaming PC custom built by NASA and tested in the Pentagon. And there are of course a lot of PC players that are caught in the middle with maybe only access to 144Hz, or maybe their computer can't consistently run 360Hz. Like, at least for me, unless the level is literally a layout, my computer cannot handle more than like 300 FPS. So even though it might not fix all of the problem, especially the gap between mobile and PC, just because it's fundamentally a completely different kind of device, I hope that this at least levels the playing field a bit, and I think it will. Next up, we are kind of not really entirely familiar with the 2.2 mechanics, and the gameplay sometimes from those features can end up being a bit cancerous at times. But as long as the creators get used to the features appropriately, then there would be a noticeable massive change in the demon list after at least around a year. So this one sort of highlights a second wave of change that I also think is pretty probable, which is after we get sort of a wave of a few like more cancerous levels with just new 2.2 features, and boom, now they're in the demon list, which is fine, that comes with every update. Creators will start to execute those ideas in a much better way that's more effective, with a lot of really cool levels. The creative community has evolved so much since the beginning of 2.1. I mean, think of how much better Edge of Destiny would look, which is already an amazing level, if it had access to a lot of the 2.2 2.2 features. I agree that kind of level will probably take more or less a year to sort of materialize, but it really is something to look forward to, assuming the update doesn't get, I don't know, delayed or something crazy like that. And lastly, to sort of go back to the idea of platformer and auto-scroller having two demons lists, this comment specifically highlights that most likely we will have different top players for those lists, and that we will have a similar hype level with new platformer top ones as we once did with auto-scroller top ones, which isn't really something that I thought about as much. Like, platformer mode is new. A new platformer top one will probably be more interesting than an auto-scroller top one, which is already something that we have been, you know, building hype around for different levels that are the new hardest levels in the game for like a decade. I really do like the idea of platformer top one sort of being like a breath of fresh air, and maybe could possibly spur some change with like the demons list, because nowadays when we get new top ones, it's not really quite as exciting. Long, intensive year plus long grind of one verifier constantly trying to make progress on one really difficult level, which isn't really something that we've gotten as much recently for multiple reasons, like the fact that Space K was hacking the entire time and that Zoink is literally just AI precision for some reason, which is something that we might see again with platformer mode, and I think that idea is pretty likely. I also wonder if some people who will join the game after 2.2 releases will mostly play platformer mode and not really do much with the autoscroller. Maybe we'll get an influx of Super Mario Maker players, I don't know. The last thing I wanted to mention is something that I think is pretty likely to happen after 2.2 regarding the demon list. I don't think we're going to get a top one that is built in 2.2 for a while, because there are already so many giant projects that already have verifiers working on them, like Apocalyptic Trilogy, or Flame Wall, or Silent Acropolis, or Tidal Wave if that ever actually gets rated. One of those is much more likely to be the new top one for quite some time before we get anything that is built in 2.2, which perhaps isn't a bad thing since a lot of early 2.2 levels are probably guaranteed to be pretty garbage and just generally not age well, which is just kind of something that happens with every update. Depending on when the update releases in November, because yeah, it's been delayed to November now, Rob Tubb said it on Twitter and on his community post, but one of these could end up being verified before 2.2's release. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. I don't think it's likely. I think the first top one in 2.2 will be fully built in 2.1. I guess depending on when the update actually releases, Avernus might end up being the final top one of 2.1. And hey, if you don't like Avernus like me, cling on to the hope that something will get verified. Hopefully I'm wrong, I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, that's it for today's video. If you did enjoy, please remember to like and subscribe. You know, yeah, you know the idea. I can't believe I'm gonna see the freaking FNAF movie before 2.2 is releasing. Also, stop watching all of like the stupid meme shitpost videos that I make. I do not want everyone's reaction to 2.2 being delayed being my most popular video. No, stop. If you'd like to join my Discord server, the link is in the description, as always. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.
Bye.